This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. So here we are, another week staring us in the face. Hope you're ready for it. Hope you did your homework last week so that you were ready to go out or go live with whatever you have in store for this week. You know, this episode dropping as they always do on a Monday morning. So I hope you're listening to this maybe as you're commuting to work, or maybe as you're, walking around the house, or you're on your morning jog, getting ready and thinking about your week. I am definitely a fan of working that way, of sort of prepping my week to come on Friday, so that I'm ready to hit the ground running on Monday morning and be pitching right out of the gate with at least a couple of ideas, understanding that news moves fast and we've always got to be nimble and, adjusting to the news cycle, what our clients might be doing, what other people might be doing. But I love to prep on Friday and pitch on Monday. It's just something that I get into. And so it's great that we have a guest to talk about pitching today. So we'll cue the segue on story pitching and get right into it. Jered Martin is the co-founder and COO for OnePitch, a tool for storytellers that aims to simplify the pitching process. If you connect with Jered on Twitter, as I have, you'll find out that he lists his interests as surf, skate, snow, wake, and golf. This guy's having a lot of fun, and this conversation should be equally fun. Jered, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jody. I'm excited to be here today and to share a little bit of insights with the listeners.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to create OnePitch.
Sure. So my background started in marketing and communications, and I graduated from college in 2013 with my BA in communication studies, moved to San Diego shortly after that and started working for a small marketing agency. And it was there that I inherently was actually doing PR and didn't realize what it was, didn't know that I was doing it, didn't know that I was actually halfway decent at it at the time. And so fast forward a few years, I got connected with my co-founder, Beck Bamberger. She owns BAM Communications, which is a large firm. It's been around for over 10 years. And I really kind of was brought under her wing and taught a lot more about the profession in the space. And so that's really where I got my start into PR. And OnePitch was actually originated through Beck and myself. She actually came up with the idea after using a bunch of different services within the industry, not only herself as well, but some of her employees and some of her coworkers, and just seeing how daunting it was to pay a lot of money for a service that was really ineffective. And so that's where we got the idea for OnePitch, and we really set out to build a platform that was going to be easy to use, and that was, again, going to be effective for those folks who are using it. And what I mean by effective is really, okay, I come into here, I'm expecting to find people that want to work with me, but I also want to know that they want to work with me. I need some reasons why that's the case. And that's what we've been doing for the past 4 years now. And here we are today.
That's great. So give us a little insight into how OnePitch works. What does the platform do?
Mm-hmm. So I think the best way to explain OnePitch, whether you're in PR or outside of PR, it's really like a Match.com. What we do is we have our PR folks, or our publicists, as we call them, sign up, create a free profile. We ask them to submit a pitch about a client or a brand that they represent, or even just submit a description about the company. And what we do is we take that information, scan it through our database of journalists. We look at all of the articles that the journalists have written over a period of time. Typically, it's about a year time frame. And we're kind of putting that into a profile. And we're saying, okay, this person, covers these various subjects, and they've written often about, these types of companies, for example. So through that analysis, we extract subject matter, we're extracting keywords and details that really give this journalist a profile. And then we take that in turn and match it with the pitch submitted by that particular user. And the end result is that that PR professional gets a list of relevant contacts. We tell them exactly who each person is, what outlet they work for. We also give them some really important data points. So we know a lot of times journalists, they're writing articles on a daily or a weekly basis, some of them not so frequently. But as a PR pro, one of the best practices is you got to read that information. You got to know what that person writes about, not just from the little bio description on their author page, but really diving into those articles. So we present the top articles that match that pitch. So the publicist can then go in, review those, take some notes, and get a better idea of the subject matter of those stories. Aside from the other data points, one of the other things that we do that we really think is really beneficial is we call it an activity score. And that just really tells the person how often that journalist is writing. And that gives them a good idea. Okay, I can pitch them. And if they're interested, I could expect a story turnaround within a few days if it's a high activity score. And if it's a low activity score, maybe they're doing something more long form or doing a featured piece. So it really sets that expectation, again, once that connection is made, as to when to expect a placement or when to expect a story to come out.
I love the analogy of the match.com. That's kind of an interesting concept. But what I'm also hearing is that your service, as intuitive as it might be, still doesn't replace the tried and true work that we as PR people still need to do, which is sifting through the information that OnePitch might provide and making sense of it for what they're going to eventually be pushing out, right?
Yeah, that's entirely correct. And for us, really, the biggest thing that we're trying to help reduce is the time spent on all the other stuff leading up to that. We know that it's important that the PR professionals spend the time, again, to read those articles, to develop, kind of a persona for this journalist, if you will. And so we're trying to reduce all that time and all the steps that it takes to get to that point, and say, here's all this information that you're already going to look for, but in a nice, complete, easy to ingest package that, again, will take you just a few minutes versus a few hours have to go through that whole process.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to research and using my own experience here, it usually falls into a couple different categories in terms of who's doing the research, right? You either already have a relationship with a reporter, who the person is and why you're pitching them, and hey, this makes sense. You probably even have a relationship with them. Or it's someone that you're at least familiar with, even if you haven't worked with them, because you read their stuff. Maybe they're in your vertical space or they're in your geographic market. Or third, and this is the worst one, you farm out a project to an assistant or an intern in your office, if you're lucky enough to have one, and they do that work. And nothing against them, but they're young and they don't quite have the intuitive that you might have or that you might be looking for. And so sometimes it creates more work. And so it sounds like OnePitch can kind of streamline that and maybe almost be sort of like a virtual assistant in a way. I don't want to rebrand your company here, but like do some of that back end work to then deliver something that's a little more actionable for you.
Yeah, I might borrow that, Jody. I'm not going to lie. A virtual assistant for PR has a nice ring to it.
We all need one.
But yeah, you're right. And again, in a sense, we're just trying to alleviate those steps. We're very well versed in the PR space. We know a lot of junior folks are put on those tasks and projects of having to develop, not just the relationships, but having to do the research and compile all the notes, and sometimes be thrown into that gauntlet of pitching. And it's a scary place. I've been there before, but I've also seen countless journalists who've said, hey, I don't know what these people are thinking, but why would you think I'm going to write about a gift guide when I'm doing profiles on the C-suite? There's just so much disconnection. And I think that's one of the big problems with putting someone, in charge of that, but not really giving them the right tools or giving them the resources to really understand how to do it effectively and do it the best they can.
OnePitch has also caught my attention. In addition to you very kindly putting the PR podcast on a list of essential PR resources, which I very much appreciate, you also come out with a lot of great data. You come out with a lot of reports. You have a lot of resources for PR people as well. And I was reading, I think it was a recent State of Pitching report where you surveyed 50 different journalists. And let me just run down some of the takeaways that I saw from there. 45 out of 50 journalists accept pitches and incorporate them into their written articles. Maybe not hugely surprising. But then you say 48 out of 50 like to receive pitches via email. 5 of 50 are open to receiving pitches through social, which I found surprisingly low, because if I know reporters are anywhere, they're on social media. They're not only promoting their own work, they're and maybe having a little fun being snarky, but they're also and I appreciate that. I jump in on snark. But they're also, I think they're probably also scanning for information out there and maybe just reading in the background. So I was surprised at that one stat. That was very interesting. That same report also mentions 24 out of 50 journalists that you survey mention how important subject lines are, when considering a pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And my training, it's like you live and die on the subject line, right? It's like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
it. If it doesn't grab you in some way, you're probably gone, because journalists are getting,
Mm-hmm.
if they used to get 100 a day, now they're getting 400 a day. They're inundated. Um, and your
Yeah.
report also showed 19 out of 50 journalists surveyed believe that data is important to include in a pitch. I'm willing to bet those 19 were all business reporters.
Yeah, I don't recall specifically, but I know we did a breakdown of outlet and role and type, and I would almost guarantee that sure most of those are B2B side.
Every conversation I've ever had with a business reporter, their first question is, "What's the number?
Mm-hmm.
What's the data point?" And so big
True.
takeaway, always a reminder to me to make sure, and I think not just for business reporters. I mean, numbers, data, information, and not just your storyline,
Mm-hmm.
really can put a pitch over the top when you're trying to convince a reporter to write a story. Agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me too. That's validation, right? You can boast as much as you want about we're the best and we do this thing better than anyone else, or we're so unique, but the numbers really tell the true story. And I mean, sometimes self-reported numbers can be flawed. That's why fact checking is very important. That's why journalists do that. But again, I think at the end of the day, it's credibility and it's validation, and that's really what drives readers. But that's also again what true journalism is all about.
Yeah, I've always urged my clients to avoid superlatives at all costs. If you want to put it in your
Mm-hmm.
boilerplate, you want to put it, down there. That's totally. You want to call yourself the best and the biggest and the what? That's totally fine. If you're going to say
Yeah.
you're the biggest, you got to back that up. If you're going to say the best, you've got to back that up. In the
Oh
first
yeah.
paragraph. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
and I was gonna say I caught a tweet last week, and I can't recall which journalist it was, but they basically listed out all these terms. They're like, do not tell me these because they don't mean anything and they don't make any sense to me. And it was, we're the biggest, or we're so unique, or we have the top this or that. It's like, no, it doesn't mean anything. Just give me the hard numbers, give me the data, and
Yeah.
that's what I want to work with.
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could share any information. This just occurred to me.
Hmm.
You've been successful launching your product here. I wonder if you've had any feedback from the journalist side about pitches they get through OnePitch, or does the platform actually send the pitch, or am I, if I were subscribing, would I be sending the pitch? How does the OnePitch platform work?
So we do actually offer the ability to send emails or to send pitches through the platform now. That's kind of a second step, if you will. The first step is really getting that list of journalists after a person submits a pitch. So there's some terminology there that we need to clarify, but really, yeah, at the end of the day, they are able to send pitches through the platform. We make it very easy for them to do that. And this is a little bit different from our original service model, where we actually were kind of a reverse Haro, and we pivoted back in November of 2020. And originally what we had designed as our service is journalists would opt in to receive these emails, and they would get a curated email of pitches that relate to the type of writing that they're interested in. We pivoted again in November, and we just recently released the ability to send emails. We were kind of working on the matching model a little bit more, adding some additional layers to improve those matches and to improve the accuracy. And again, we just recently launched this ability to pitch through the platform. We make it very easy. If you submit a pitch, we can easily allow you to just click a button and upload that same information into an email. We take the guessing game out of knowing the journalist's email address. We'll automatically include that, give folks their name, give them a signature as well. So really, it's just a matter of crafting that pitch to make it very personal for the journalist. And we've been slowly starting to accumulate some data surrounding this. And we've seen that at least response rates are starting to grow as folks are starting to get a little bit more personal with their pitches. And I would say secondary to that, what we're noticing from a response perspective is that a lot of journalists are saying, I'm so inundated that I cannot cover this right now.
You're getting that feedback.
Yes. Yeah. That's feedback we're getting from the journalists. And some of the feedback as well that we're hearing from some of our customers is just that, hey, I got a response. That's great. But they weren't interested just because, of the high volume that they get on a daily basis. What their editorial is already, it's very tough for them to say, okay, I'm going to put everything aside and talk to this person or write about this when I surely, don't have the time to do that.
That's amazing. It's not surprising to me, but it's also
Yeah.
really amazing to me, and it reinforces what I think all PR people have known for quite a while, that and this is,
Hmm.
fundamentally changing the industry, is
Yeah.
the dwindling number of people available to cover news in any
Hmm.
newsroom. Pick your newsroom in any city across the country, with a combination of cutbacks, planned and unplanned.
Yeah.
And the worst of it is, the hedge fund buying the newspaper so that they can sell the building that the newsroom is located in. Just doesn't make
Hmm.
sense to me. So I
No.
weep every time I see those stats about people being laid off and jobs being cut. And but it also makes our lives more challenging as well. And it reinforces what you and I are talking about here, which is the combination of being really smart, being strategic, doing your research, and
Hmm.
and using that smart research to develop the relationships that are going to serve you long term.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to commend folks who are doing that as well. Because again, at the end of the day, the journalists are responding and saying they're not interested. I think there was a long period of time where people were like, oh, I don't get responses, or I'm not hearing back from anyone. I don't know what's going on. And I think journalists are kind of catching on to that trend a little bit. And I think part of it is because people are starting to get better at this whole process. There's still a group who is not, and who's doing the spray and pray method and sending irrelevant things to journalists. And I don't think that's ever going to go away. But I think there are more and more journalists who are realizing that it's so much easier for them just to send a response back and say no than to not say anything at all, and then get follow up after follow up after follow up, or misaligned pitch after misaligned pitch. I mean, we could go down the gamut with all that. But I don't want to leave the journalist out in that sense. Again, I think they're starting to catch on and realize there are a lot of valuable resources out there, and the people who are doing the actual research and the work should get rewarded in some way.
There's got to be to use your analogy, a Match.com joke there, repitching a journalist over and over and over again that doesn't respond.
Yeah, we could use like the Tinder swipe left, and like once you
Oh my
swipe left, you
goodness.
don't get to go back. But
Man, we're gonna get into trouble here.
Yep.
What are some of your, so to kind of round out this conversation here, what are some of the key pieces of advice that you have and that OnePitch has for pitching journalists effectively? I mean, other than obviously doing the research, once to get you to the place where you are pitching.
Yeah. So I think one of the many things that we've learned since day one is the preferences that journalists have for receiving a pitch. And one of the top things that we hear, not only on the podcast, but that I've heard through my conversations, brevity, keeping pitches short and succinct and specific. They don't need fluffy language. Again, leave out those terms about the big and the best. Just tell them what you want to tell them. Tell them in a concise way. Make sure the subject line reflects that. And that's really the biggest tactic that seems to work really well. And I think there's also one other thing to do before that occurs. And I think a lot of folks, excuse me, I got to take a drink of water here for a second. I think a lot of folks miss that first step in just facilitating a relationship. And a lot of journalists that I've spoken with, again, that are on the podcast have said, I don't want to be pitched cold. I don't, if I don't know you, chances are I'm probably not going to open your email. So really just taking the first step to introduce yourself, tell them who you are, tell them who you represent or where you work. That is a really, really good first step. Again, get on their radar. And you don't want to just do that and then, again, kind of let things go open-ended until you want to pitch them. You want to facilitate that relationship a little bit more. And there could be value to be offered, or maybe it's just a simple compliment on something that they've worked on. But having consistent touch points is a very good way, again, to keep yourself top of mind. And then when you do have something newsworthy to share with them, and it also works in reverse. If they have a story and they're looking for a source, they may come to you because, okay, I know this person, I know who they work for. I mean, journalists, they've got a huge inbox, as we know. A lot of them filter emails when they're important, and they'll go back to those, or they have a spreadsheet, or they have an Airtable. So, when you're taking those necessary steps, when you're doing things in a very genuine way and in a way that, you're trying to befriend them, not just use and forget them, they remember you for that. And that really will go a long way.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's the way I conduct my business. And I go back to the advice that I got from a terrific mentor of mine, where she used to say that, it's not about this story, it's about the next story. And it was about relationships. It's about creating relationships with a reporter and positioning yourself to be someone of value to them for the long haul. And I think that's where we become really successful at what we do.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I like that that little point too. It's not about this story; it's about the next story. That makes a lot of sense.
I'll give it up to my mentor, Nancy Haberman, one of the smartest ladies I've ever met. Well, thank you, Jered. This has been a great conversation. We're going to segue now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. I know you're rubbing your hands together on the Zoom there. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. So with your indulgence, Jered, let's begin. Rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
Morning Brew, if that is considered a news source.
Sure, that's a news source. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Rapid fire question number 2. What is your favorite social media platform? I think I know the answer to this one.
I'm going to go with Twitter.
There you go.
I don't use it a lot for personal stuff, but it is by far, I go on it every morning to look at the news headlines, to see what people are talking about. Definitely number 1 for me.
Definitely. All right, I'm with you. I'll see you on Twitter. Rapid fire question number 3. Coffee or alcohol?
Coffee, espresso specifically.
All right. Yes. I have black coffee, straight black coffee. I've drunk it every day since I was like 20 years old, working in a newsroom overnight, and I had to stay awake. And I never went back. It's glorious.
Can I ask you real quick, Jody?
Go ahead.
How many of those do you drink a day?
2. This
is
this is a big Yeti thermos. I don't know how many ounces, probably about 20 ounces. I down 2 of these a day, 1 in the morning and 1 like early afternoon. I do not drink coffee past 5 o'clock because then I know that I'm going to be awake and forget it, man. So, and I go 2 for 1 on water with these. For every one of these I drink, I make sure that I drink 2 waters. So I'm doubling up on there. Maybe we should add water to the question. All right, let's get back on track here. We're having too much fun. Rapid fire question number 4. What is your favorite on the run food?
Tacos.
Oh, good one. All right. Do you have a specific place you like to go? You said you're in San Diego, right?
Yeah, any taco truck on the side of the street, you're going to be guaranteed to get probably the best fish taco you've ever had in your life.
Nice. And rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Oh, that's a tough question. I've got a lot of career goals and aspirations, but I've never actually thought about what I want to be after this. I'm kind of so stuck in the moment, if you will.
You're working hard. You're building something. That's great. That's terrific. You got that passion for it. You can hear it and see it clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what I want to be after this. Maybe it segues or it ties into what I'm doing right now. And I think I want to be known as someone who's a trusted resource in the media relations space.
That's great. Well, you're well on your way. Jered, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you and OnePitch online.
Yeah, absolutely. You can head to our website at OnePitch.io. If you wanted to connect with me personally, I do hand out my personal email. So Jered, Jered, at onepitch.co is where you can reach out to me if you have questions, comments, compliments, if you will. And then on Twitter, I'm across all platforms at JMoMonk, and I'll spell that out because it's a little tough, at JMOMONK.
All right. There's a story there, which we will probably find out on Twitter one day.
Yep, maybe. I keep that a little hidden.
Exactly right. You got to keep the mystery, man. Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Jered. And thank you everyone for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Check and connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The PR Podcast. Send us a question or a comment. We would love to hear from you. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and online at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.